we're going to talk about hydrogen, and we'll talk about oxygen. This is going to be a little bit different because I think the number of businesses and clients that really care about this is a little bit smaller. It does provide this idea of headless, and while we love it, we do realize that it's not for everyone, and you do need to be kind of at a specific place in your maturity, and maybe your goals also need to align with it. But we'll get Dagan, who's our in-house expert, and we'll get him to chime in on this. So Dagan, first of all, thank you for being here and for giving us a little bit of your time.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
Awesome. So audio is coming in good. So let's jump into this. So one of the things we really love about Shopify is the tools and technologies that it provides. It's got a really great partner ecosystem. There are lots of themes, lots of apps. There is a content management system. There is a metadata management system. So with all of that being available, and this is a little bit outside of talking specifically about oxygen and hydrogen, and more a little bit about just headless in general. When would someone consider headless?
That's a great question. As you said, it's absolutely not for everyone. I like to think about it as going to build a new home, where you have the option of taking pre-existing plans, which would correspond to the apps and all the other tools that Shopify has for you. Headless would be more like starting completely from scratch, working with an architect and building anything you want. It gives you complete control and freedom to do anything you want, but there's extra effort and cost associated with that. When you work with Headless, most of the apps in the Shopify store won't actually work for you. There are a handful, but it's just a tiny subset. And like I said, it's longer and more difficult. But on the plus side, you can create anything you want. Some of the use cases would include, say, integrating an existing website or adding e-commerce capabilities to a site that you already have, maybe pulling out your existing e-com platform, but keeping all of your existing custom development. And you could also create something just completely custom that's just not really possible using out-of-the-box Shopify. And then I think the final use case would be developing outside of traditional web environments. You can integrate e-commerce into your mobile applications, directly into video games, IoT, and anything else, really, since it's just API based.
I really love that example. And we definitely see the need to integrate into apps, like mobile apps, right? Native mobile apps, where being able to have these headless APIs available is a great help. And if nothing else, it saves you time. Anytime you don't have to reinvent the wheel to do this, and you can leverage a proven, secure set of APIs in the backend, but still have that Shopify admin that's omni-channel platform available to manage all of this. I think it's a win for businesses that again are looking to be omni-channel, a little bit outside of just web and point of sale. Because again, when we talk about omni-channel, everyone kind of goes, oh yeah, it's web and store, but you forget about apps, you forget about like video games, you forget about other marketplaces and all the things where you can really kind of leverage the APIs to get your experience to really be a standout. One thing I will kind of point out, and this is part of, I hate to say it, but kind of the thing that we experienced with COVID and the change we saw in the digital retail ecosystem is that COVID pushed brands that didn't sell online, that didn't necessarily consider online to be a big part of their brand story online. And what that did is actually increased competition for the customer share. So in increased competition, that means now you have to try harder to win that business. And in my mind, being able to go headless and really kind of customize that experience, as Dagan said, I think that's a huge win. You will see that most platforms are talking about headless now, and there are a set of headless technologies. So that said, hydrogen and oxygen, right? We saw this, I mean, they're beyond being on the periodic table, which isn't what we're talking about here today. We saw them being mentioned for about a year now, released last update over the summer, and now there is new functionality. But what is it like? What is hydrogen? What is oxygen? And why should we be excited about this?
Yeah, absolutely. First, let's start with hydrogen. Hydrogen is the platform that Shopify has released for building these headless projects. It gives you a great head start on getting up and running. You will get a number of pre-built components and a full demo store even that you can get up and running in literally minutes to start experimenting with. It's built on open source technologies, so finding developers to create and maintain it very easy, relatively inexpensive. And what it is it's a framework built upon React using JavaScript, and it comes with build tools. Like I said, example components for getting your product listing pages, product detail pages, everything up and running quickly. It also simplifies access to the APIs, the Shopify storefront APIs, and it supplies analytics solutions as well. So it's a really nice platform that's fun to work with. Oxygen, on the other hand, is a complementary product. Oxygen is a hosting service for your hydrogen applications. First off, it's available at no extra cost, which obviously is great. It integrates very seamlessly. So as soon as your developers make a change and commit it to the code repository, it's automatically built and sent to the Oxygen servers. So you get automated deploys. It's highly scalable. It handles a lot of your security for you, including things like denial of service protection. It has infrastructure rather for handling logging, debugging issues in it. And it generally just makes your life a lot easier if you are working with the Hydrogen platform.
What about CDN? Is that also part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, I think, but okay. There are, this runs natively in the Cloudflare Worker platform. So it's all running as one of the platforms you can run it on is directly inside Cloudflare CDN. So yeah, very performant.
Very cool. So it sounds like with Hydrogen and Oxygen together, we're still very much in the SaaS, software as a service space. We don't have to worry about servers. We don't have to worry about hosting. So we get what kind of Shopify is known for is that, really, really awesome kind of platform that gives you that uptime, but also with flexibility. And again, I love hearing that Hydrogen is based on React. Just because, Dagan, like you said, it's easy to find good React developers. There are obviously a lot of them at RSM, but it's great that it's not something that's very proprietary and will lock you in to either the platform or specific solution providers. I think that's been a really great decision from Shopify to build it, as such. But what I saw in this latest release, and I intentionally did not talk about it too much because I was kind of saving it for you, was Hydrogen 2.0. And I know we haven't really seen very much happening with 1.0, and in my mind, that was still because the platform was new, and I think a lot of people didn't know what to do with it. But now 2.0 is out. What is new with 2.0? What, again, what are you excited about with 2.0, and what do you think it will do for hydrogen and oxygen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am really excited about it. Just as some background, just like you said, the initial hydrogen was announced, it might have been 2 years ago now, but wasn't actually available to start working with for quite a while after that. And it was really exciting because it introduced cutting edge web technology. It used the latest development frameworks and was just blazingly fast to work with and was really nice. So seeing the jump to 2 so soon afterwards was even more exciting because while version 1 was cutting edge, 2 was even more so. What Shopify did is they went out and acquired a startup that developed an open source framework called Remix. And Remix is a cutting edge new platform for the web that makes a full stack development pretty easy. It's similar to Next.js and some of the other ones that have been around for a while, but it has some really nice additions on top of it. So by actually purchasing that company, Shopify is really showing their commitment to the platform. In addition, coming out with an even better version so soon after coming out with something so solid was great.
It makes me a little bit worried that there'll be version 3, and one of the questions I wanted to ask you a little bit later is just kind of what does a migration look like, but we'll get there, I think. Are you worried at all that we're going to get into this kind of mix of JavaScript frameworks that are coming out, become the next shiny object, and then kind of disappear before anyone really has a chance to adopt it? If that's a fair question, I mean,
Yes, that is a good question, but I think by actually purchasing Remix, I think there's long-term dedication on the part of Shopify to this technology. They're really pushing it. And it's important to note that version 1 and 2 are both React-based and they're substantially similar. It's definitely not zero effort to migrate from 1 to 2, but it's not that huge. It's just a switch out on some of the background platform, the higher level platforms used for it. And other things you get with version 2 is accessing the storefront APIs a lot easier now. That's been polished. Overall, everything's been taken up a notch. And like I said, now you can install and run the demo store in literally minutes. You just run a couple command line prompts and it's up and running, and you can start working from there.
So I actually wanted to ask you about the demo store. I mean, do you feel like it's a good enough place to start building, or is it really kind of meant as an example? I really love seeing these kind of accelerator stores provided with, anytime you see a new e-commerce platform, it's great to have an accelerator that you can kind of play around with. But do you think it's a starting point, or it's just a play sandbox?
It depends on what your goals are. I think it's probably better as an example. It's not a massive amount of code or infrastructure because it's fairly easy to build on your own under the Hydrogen platform. I think it's just a great reference. You absolutely could use it as your starting point, but I personally would probably start from scratch. And when you create a new project, you're given the option of either starting with the full demo store or just what they call a hello world template, which is just a bare bones starting point.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And we've definitely seen in the past with other platforms where like an accelerator will be, a shoes and handbags type of a store, and it's great if that's what you're selling. But if you're doing anything else, then you really kind of do have to start from scratch, and it's just not going to be a good fit. You'll spend more time trying to disassemble it than it's really worse. So coming back to one of the topics I didn't really discuss intentionally when we talked about new functionality, being support for B2B APIs. Specifically, and I'll kind of roll back on that point. When Shopify B2B came out over the summer, the APIs did not really exist to allow you to interact with B2B functionality programmatically. It wasn't available. And they started coming out around January is when we start seeing kind of going into production, general availability for things like company, price lists, customers. So those API endpoints became available. But for oxygen and hydrogen, I mean, really for hydrogen, is there support now for B2B? If I was to build a really custom kind of B2B vendor portal or dealer portal, something like that, could I do it with hydrogen now, or is there still a little bit of waiting I'll have to do?
Unfortunately, the shorter answer is no, you really can't do B2B with hydrogen right now. There's no components for it. And the API, there are B2B APIs, like you said, but they're meant for use within Shopify apps. So using the traditional store and ecosystem, they're not available through the storefront API. So that's where most of the data is pulled for hydrogen.
Very cool. So it sounds like a little bit more waiting. What we have seen with Shopify is that there is definitely a huge commitment to B2B, and probably one of the single biggest areas where we're seeing new features come out at every release. So fingers crossed, we really would love to see hydrogen support B2B in the future. Because it will open up the doors for way more flexibility and way more types of customers that we can bring on the platform. Being RSM, we definitely see a need for this. So let's talk a little bit about what happens if I'm a customer, let's say on Shopify Plus, and I listen to Oleg and Dagan talk, and I'm like, man, this is what I need. This is what has been holding my business back. What does migration look like? How difficult is it to get off, let's say, Plus and migrate at least my store, my basic online experience onto Hydrogen?
Theoretically, it's very easy, but like I said earlier, it's like building a house from scratch. I highly recommend working with the equivalent of an architect here, or at least just planning everything out really well, because you have complete control and power over everything. But as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. So it's something you want to do carefully. Shopify does give you the ability to kind of migrate piece by piece if that's what you're looking for. I don't know that that's necessarily a great solution to have part of it in the more traditional storefront and then part of it on Hydrogen. You have that ability.
When you say piece by piece, do you mean migrating, let's say, your static pages and your listing page, and then leaving, let's say, detail pages and checkout on traditional Shopify? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there's examples in the documentation online for doing exactly that. You could pull over PLPs or PDPs if that's what you were looking to do. It's a little complicated to set up. You have to get some proxies going just to send each page to the right place to forward it over, but it can be done. And there's ways to share carts between the two so that you can slowly move over without customers losing anything in their carts. So it's possible, but again, I would encourage people to take a really thoughtful approach to moving over to Headless, because if you're taking that leap, you must have a good reason for it. And so I can't imagine for your customer experience that having a piecemeal approach would really make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Where my mind goes is what will it do if I decided to piecemeal it? What will it do to my SEO? Because now, like you said, there are proxies, and even if you can get it set up to work correctly, it introduces a lot of risk. But at the same time, if I was getting creative with it, I can definitely see the world where I'll use something like Shogun for my page building, and that is a very easy experience. It's nice drag and drop CMS, and like I said, anytime I see drag and drop, I get excited because again, they don't have to call us. But putting off some of the really complex things into Hydrogen, we see, for example, product configurators a lot, and I can definitely see Hydrogen being used for like a really custom product configurator that's then gets integrated into my basic Shopify Plus framework of a site. And I really love that the cards can be shared. We've seen lots of issues with anytime like you want to have a multi-brand store and shared cards, and it just becomes it's trouble, right? So yeah, great. I think that all sounds amazing. I would really love to talk about Hydrogen to really anyone who is interested in potentially migrating to it. It is a really exciting framework, and we're pretty pumped to get some projects going with that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of all the questions, Dagan, I had that I wanted to ask. I really appreciate you being here and kind of going along with this. It's been great. So thank you.
My pleasure.